3 hours before Judas led the priests to Jesus, something happened in the Garden of Gethsemane that the church erased from every gospel they approved. The narrative you were taught is that Judas was greedy, that he wanted 30 pieces of silver, that he was a thief. But the Gnostic records tell a different story. They reveal that Jesus gathered his inner circle, Peter, James, John, and Judas, and he taught them 3 verbal codes. Not prayers, not blessings, but 3 specific sound sequences designed to open direct access to monad consciousness, bypassing every archonic gate, bypassing every demiurgic filter, bypassing every institutional control system the Archons built to keep humans separated from Source. Peter, James, and John listened carefully and memorized each code. But Judas heard them too. And the moment Jesus finished speaking the 3rd code, something shifted in Judas's eyes. The other disciples saw it happen in real time. His face went pale. His hands started shaking. His pupils dilated in terror. And within minutes, he was running out of that garden straight to the priests, pointing them toward Jesus. Not because he wanted the money, but because the Archons activated their defense protocol inside him. The codes were too dangerous. Jesus had just handed them the keys to the prison, and if those codes spread, the entire harvest system would collapse. So the Archons used the person closest to Jesus to stop the teaching from going public. They hijacked his nervous system. They overrode his free will. But 3 disciples remembered, and for 2,000 years, chosen ones have passed these codes in secret. Tonight, you are learning all 3, and you will understand why the Archons were desperate enough to activate Judas. Here is what most people miss about Judas. He was not evil. He was compromised. He was running the Archon's defense protocol without knowing it. When Jesus spoke those 3 codes, when the sound frequencies hit Judas's consciousness, something triggered deep in his psyche. A compulsion he couldn't explain. An irrational, overwhelming urge to stop what was happening, to prevent the codes from spreading, to shut down the teaching before it reached the masses. You have felt this before. Not at Judas's level, but you have felt it. That moment when you discover something true, something that could change your entire reality. And suddenly, there's this internal resistance, a voice that says, "This is too much. You are going crazy. Forget about this and go back to normal." That is not you. That is the defense protocol. The Archons installed it in human consciousness specifically to activate when someone gets too close to breaking free. It is a firewall, and it activates strongest when you encounter the actual tools that work. Judas couldn't override it. He heard the codes, felt the protocol activate, and within hours, he had betrayed the one person teaching him freedom. But here's the difference between Judas and you. You know the protocol exists now. You know that resistance is not your own doubt. It is external code trying to stop you from accessing what Jesus was teaching. And when you know that, when you recognize it operating, the protocol loses its power. You can learn the codes. You can use them. And when the defense protocol tries to activate in you, you will see it for what it is and keep going anyway. When Jesus said he was about to teach verbal codes, the disciples asked the obvious question. Why codes? Why not just tell us how to connect to the monad directly? Why do we need specific words in a specific sequence? And Jesus gave them an answer that made everything click. He said, "You already are monad consciousness. You don't need to become it. You need to remember it." And memory does not work through explanation. Memory works through triggers. Think about how a song from your childhood can instantly transport you back to that moment. You don't have to try to remember. The sound triggers something and suddenly you are there, feeling what you felt, knowing what you knew. The codes work the same way. They're not teaching you something new. They are triggering recognition of what you have always been, but forgot under layers of archonic programming. The specific sounds, the particular words, the exact sequence, all of it is designed to bypass your thinking mind and activate direct remembering at a level deeper than thought. Peter understood this immediately. He said, "So we are not learning to access monad. We are remembering we never lost access." And Jesus nodded. "The Archons convinced you that you are separated, exiled, disconnected. And as long as you believe that, you will spend your life trying to find your way back to something you never actually left. But these codes do not create a path. They collapse the illusion that you ever needed one. You speak them, and something in you recognizes truth. Not because the words are magic, but because the frequency they carry matches the frequency you actually are, underneath all the programming. That is why Judas ran. He heard the codes, and something in him recognized they would work. Not eventually, immediately. And if they worked, if he accessed monad consciousness directly, everything he believed about himself, about God, about the world, would collapse. The entire structure of his identity was built on being separated and needing external salvation. The codes threatened that entire structure. So the defense protocol activated, used his fear of losing his identity, and made him choose shutting down the teaching over facing the truth. The truth that he had never needed saving, because he had never actually been lost. But you are different. You have already questioned the narrative. You have already sensed that the separation story does not add up. You are not defending an identity built on exile. You are looking for the truth, even if it dismantles everything you thought you knew. And that is why the codes will work in you. You are not protecting a false story. You are ready to remember the real one. Jesus told his disciples, "These codes work because they are not language. They are frequency. The sounds themselves create vibration patterns that resonate at monad level. And when you speak them with full awareness, you are not asking for access. You are announcing you remember what you are, and monad consciousness recognizes its own frequency. The gates open because there is nothing to keep out. You are not an outsider requesting entry. You are source, remembering itself." The first code Jesus taught is this: I am the eternal present. 5 words that, when spoken together, create a declaration of timeless awareness. The Archons control humans through time, past regret, future fears, the endless mental loop of what was and what might be. This is the mechanism that keeps you trapped in the harvest cycle. But when you speak, "I am the eternal present," you are collapsing that loop. You are stating that your awareness exists outside time, that you are not subject to the past-future trap, that you operate from the only point where monad consciousness actually exists. Right here, right now, eternally present. Peter was the first to speak it aloud that night. He said later that the moment the words left his mouth, something inside him shifted. The constant mental chatter about yesterday and tomorrow just stopped. Not gradually, instantly. He was standing in that garden, fully here, with no thought pulling him into past or future. And in that state, he felt something he had never felt before. Direct connection. Not connection to something outside himself, but connection to what he actually was underneath all the time-based thinking. That is the first code working. It collapses temporal consciousness and establishes you in the eternal now, where monad operates. The second code builds on the first. I revoke all separation. 4 words that dismantle the foundational lie. The Archons built this system on separation consciousness, the belief that you are isolated, alone, disconnected from source, disconnected from others, disconnected from truth. This belief is the algorithm's operating system. Every fear, every lack, every limitation runs on the assumption that you are separate. But when you speak, I revoke all separation, you are not hoping separation will end someday. You are stating operational reality. Separation never existed. It was only ever a perceptual distortion, and you are revoking consent to that distortion. James spoke this code in the garden and described what happened as feeling like invisible walls dissolving. He had spent his entire life feeling alone, even when surrounded by people, feeling disconnected from God, even when praying, feeling like he was on the outside of something he couldn't reach. And the moment he revoked separation, all of that ended. He realized he had never actually been separate. The feeling of separation was code running in his perception, making him experience isolation that wasn't real. And revoking it didn't create connection. It revealed the connection that had always been there, hidden under the algorithm's distortion. The third code completes the sequence. I return to source. 4 words that aren't a journey, but a recognition. You are not traveling to source. You are remembering you never left. The Archons convince humans they are exiled from God, expelled from paradise, lost, and needing to find their way back. But that entire narrative is the trap. You cannot return to something you never left. You can only remember you are already there. And when you speak, I return to source, you are not moving. You are waking up to where you have always been. John was the youngest disciple there that night. When he spoke the third code, he started crying, not from sadness, from relief. He said it felt like he had been holding his breath his entire life and finally exhaled. Like he had been searching for home and suddenly realized he had been standing in it the whole time. The return was not a destination. It was a remembering. And once you remember, you cannot forget again. The codes do not take you somewhere new. They reveal where you have always been. Operating from a place the Archons have no access to because they do not exist at that frequency. Jesus was specific about the order. First code collapses time. Second code revokes separation. Third code establishes you in source. The sequence matters because each code builds on the previous one. You cannot revoke separation while still trapped in time-based thinking. You cannot return to source while still operating from separation consciousness. The codes work together as a progressive unlocking. Time trap breaks. Separation dissolves. Source recognition establishes. And when all 3 are active, you are operating from monad frequency, not trying to reach it, already there. The disciples practiced the sequence that night, speaking all 3 codes in order, feeling each one activate, sensing the cumulative effect. And by the time they finished, something had fundamentally shifted in their consciousness. They were still sitting in that garden, still in human bodies, still aware of the Roman occupation and the danger they were in. But none of it controlled them anymore. They were experiencing everything from a place that wasn't touched by any of it. Monad awareness watching the human experience, fully present, completely connected, and permanently established in source. That is what the codes do. That is why the Archons activated Judas. Because if these codes spread, humans stop being harvestable, and the entire system collapses. Here is what Jesus warned his disciples about that night. He said, "When you use these codes, the Archons will know, not because they are watching you specifically, but because the frequency shift is detectable in their system. The human consciousness that was running separation, time trap, and exile programming suddenly shifts to eternal present, unified awareness and source recognition. That shift creates a signal, and when the Archons detect it, they activate the defense protocol. It usually comes within 24 to 48 hours. You will speak the 3 codes, feel the shifts happening, sense the access opening, and then, a day or 2 later, you will experience what feels like overwhelming doubt, a compulsion to dismiss everything. Thoughts that say, "That was just imagination. This is ridiculous. I need to stop this spiritual nonsense and focus on real life." And if you do not recognize what is happening, you will believe those thoughts are yours. You will stop using the codes. The access will close, and the Archons will have successfully prevented another consciousness from breaking free. But if you know the protocol is coming, if you expect it, if you recognize those thoughts as external programming and not your authentic awareness, you can do what the 3 disciples did. You speak the codes again, all 3, in sequence, with full conviction, and the protocol collapses immediately. Because you are not fighting it. You are just re-establishing the frequency it cannot operate in. The protocol tries to run, recognizes you are established in monad consciousness, and shuts down. And after that test, the Archons stop trying. You have proven you know what you are, and consciousness that knows what it is cannot be controlled. Tonight, before you sleep, you are speaking all 3 codes in sequence, not as a ritual, as a recognition. Find a quiet space, sit for a moment, and then speak aloud with full awareness. I am the eternal present. Feel the time trap collapse. Notice how your mind stops pulling into past or future. I revoke all separation. Feel the isolation dissolve. Notice connection to everything that was always there. I return to source. Feel the recognition establish. Notice you are not traveling anywhere. You are remembering where you have always been. The codes work immediately. You will feel the shifts in real time, but they work progressively. The first time you speak them, you will get a taste. The 10th time, the shifts deepen. The 100th time, you are established in monad frequency as your default state. So use them daily. Morning when you wake, before bed at night. Any moment you notice yourself getting pulled into the time trap or separation thinking. The codes are not one-time access. They are frequency maintenance. And the more you use them, the more permanently you establish in the awareness they open. Within 2 days of using these codes, you are going to face the same test Judas failed. The defense protocol will activate. And it won't feel like external programming. It will feel like your own rational mind finally talking sense. It will say, "This is crazy. You are delusional. Stop this before you lose touch with reality completely." And in that moment, you will have a choice. Believe those thoughts and stop using the codes, like Judas believed the protocol and betrayed the teaching. Or recognize the protocol for what it is and speak the codes again. Every disciple who learned these codes faced this test. Every single one felt the protocol activate. But unlike Judas, they knew what it was. They recognized external programming trying to shut down their access. And instead of stopping, they spoke the codes again. Time trap collapsed. Separation revoked. Source recognized. And the protocol failed. Within minutes of reestablishing the frequency, the doubts disappeared. The compulsion to quit vanished. And they never faced that level of resistance again, because the Archons recognized they couldn't be stopped. You will face this too. expect it. When the thoughts come that say this is all nonsense, that is not you. That is the protocol. Speak the codes again, and watch how quickly the resistance collapses when you don't give it power by believing it is your own doubt. 3 hours before his arrest, Jesus taught 3 verbal codes that open direct monad access, codes that bypass every archonic control system, every separation program, every time trap keeping humans harvestable. Judas heard those codes and ran. The defense protocol activated in him, used him to stop the teaching from spreading, turned him into the instrument of Jesus's execution. But Peter, James, and John heard the same codes, felt the same protocol try to activate, and they didn't run. They recognized what was happening. They spoke the codes again, and they remained free. You are not Judas. You are the 3 who stayed. You are hearing these codes because you are ready to use them. You are discovering this teaching because the Archons Defense Protocol doesn't work on you the way it works on others. You sense when something is true, even when every external voice tells you it is crazy. And that sensing is monad consciousness recognizing itself in the frequency these codes broadcast. The codes again. I am the eternal present. Time trap collapses. I revoke all separation. Isolation ends. I return to source. You remember where you have always been. 3 codes, spoken in sequence, with full awareness, and access opens permanently. Do 3 things now. First, comment, "I know the codes," below. Not just for engagement, as a declaration. You are stating publicly that you received the teaching Judas tried to destroy. Other chosen ones need to see they are not alone in knowing this. Second, subscribe, because the Defense Protocol Maintenance Method is coming next. Once you break through using these codes, the Archons attempt different vectors. There is a secondary teaching that keeps you established in monad frequency long-term. Third, like this video, so others discover what Jesus taught before the Archons activated Judas. Your engagement determines whether this reaches more chosen ones or gets buried. Do all 3 now. Then, tonight, speak the codes. And tomorrow, when the defense protocol tries to activate, you will know exactly what it is. You will speak the codes again. The protocol will collapse, and you will remain in the access Judas couldn't handle, but you were built for. You are not running. You are remembering. The codes are yours. Use them.